I stood in his office, holding a photograph I was never meant to find. The woman in the picture was holding a baby. That baby was me. And the man beside her, decades younger but unmistakable, was my husband. The man who had bought me like a contract. The man whose locked door I had just broken through. Everything I thought I knew was about to shatter. My name is Scarlett. I'm 22 years old, and I came to New York with nothing but a worn suitcase and a pocket full of dreams. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted my name in lights, my face on screens, my voice echoing in theaters. But New York doesn't care about dreams. It swallows them whole. I had no family to catch me when I fell. No safety net. Just me, alone in a city of 8 million souls, feeling invisible among the crowd. My apartment was barely big enough to turn around in. One room, peeling paint, a window that looked out onto a brick wall. I worked 3 jobs just to keep that tiny space. Waitressing until my feet bled, cleaning office buildings while the city slept. Anything to pay rent and put food in my stomach. Life was hard in ways I never imagined. But I kept going to auditions. Every single one I could find. I memorized lines on subway rides. I practiced in front of my cracked bathroom mirror. I gave everything I had, every time. And every time, the answer was the same. No. You're too young. Too inexperienced, not ready, not right, not enough. The rejections piled up like stones, each one heavier than the last. I started to lose hope. The dream that had brought me here began to feel like a cruel joke. Maybe I should go home, I thought. Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe I never had what it takes. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Marcus, my manager. Usually when Marcus called, it was to deliver another rejection. Another door slammed in my face. My stomach tightened as I answered, but his voice sounded different this time. Uncertain, almost uncomfortable. He told me about an opportunity. A wealthy man was looking for a young actress. That this wasn't for a film or a television show. This was private, personal. I didn't understand what he meant. Marcus hesitated, then told me the payment. The number made my breath catch. It was more money than I'd seen in my entire life. More than I could earn in years of waitressing. It could solve everything. Every problem. Every fear. But something felt wrong. What kind of private role required that much money? Was this dangerous? Was it even legal? My mind raced with dark possibilities. But then I looked around my apartment. At the empty refrigerator. At the overdue rent notice on my counter. At my reflection in the mirror, exhausted and desperate. I didn't feel like I had a choice. I needed this. So I said yes. The house stood like a fortress in the wealthiest part of the city. All stone and iron gates and windows that gleamed like cold eyes. I walked up the long driveway, my heart hammering in my chest. When I rang the doorbell, the sound echoed, deep and hollow. A tall man in a black suit opened the door without a word and gestured for me to follow. The inside was even more intimidating than the outside. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors that clicked under my cheap shoes, paintings that probably cost more than my entire life. Then I saw him. Richard. He was 68 years old, tall and imposing in an expensive suit. His hair was silver, his eyes sharp and calculating. He looked at me the way someone might examine a piece of furniture they were considering purchasing. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He told me exactly what he wanted. Not an actress. A wife. The word hit me like a slap. I stared at him, unable to speak. He continued as if he were discussing a business transaction. He needed a beautiful, quiet wife. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Someone who would simply exist beside him, a pretty accessory to his life. In exchange, he would pay me $10,000 every month. $10,000. I could barely comprehend that amount. He said I would live in luxury. Want for nothing. He gave me one night to decide. I went back to my apartment and didn't sleep at all. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning in circles. What was I about to do? Was I really going to marry a stranger for money? What did that make me? But every time I tried to talk myself out of it, I thought about my empty bank account, my overdue bills, the constant fear of ending up on the street. When morning came, I picked up my phone and called him. I said yes. The wedding happened quickly, quietly. Only a handful of people knew it had happened at all. I moved into Richard's mansion, and suddenly I was living in a different world. He showered me with gifts, designer dresses that cost thousands, diamond jewelry that sparkled like captured stars, everything money could buy. But Richard himself remained distant, cold. He never touched me. Never kissed me. There was no warmth in his eyes when he looked at me. No affection. I was living in a beautiful cage, but it was still a cage. Richard had rules I had to follow. At parties I had to smile and laugh and pretend I was happy. I couldn't ask him personal questions. I couldn't show curiosity about his life. And one rule was absolute. I was never, under any circumstances, allowed in his office. That room stayed locked, and I wasn't permitted a key. I had money. I had luxury. But I didn't have happiness. I didn't have love. At night, I would lie in my bedroom and stare at the wall that separated me from Richard's room. His door was always closed. I wondered constantly why he had really married me. Was it truly just for appearances? Just for my face? I felt more alone in that enormous house than I ever had in my tiny apartment. One evening, Richard took me to a charity gala. The room was full of wealthy people in expensive clothes, all of them talking and laughing like they owned the world. I stood by myself near the bar, feeling out of place, when a woman approached me. She was elegant and beautiful, but her expression was hard, angry. She stopped directly in front of me. Her eyes cut into mine. "Hello, Scarlett," she said. "I'm Victoria, Richard's ex-wife." My heart lurched. I hadn't known Richard had been married before. Victoria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a sharp whisper. "He married you for the inheritance, didn't he?" I didn't understand. She smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "Richard has to remain married for 1 full year to claim his family's estate. It's worth millions. If he can stay married for 12 months, all of it becomes his. If he doesn't, everything goes to his son." The words felt like ice water in my veins. I wasn't a wife. I was a contract, a tool. Richard hadn't married me because he wanted me. He'd married me because he needed me to secure his fortune. Later that night, I found Richard alone on the terrace. "Victoria told me about the inheritance," I said. My voice shook. "She said you only married me so you could claim your family's money." Richard looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "Don't listen to Victoria," he said. "She's bitter. She's been trying to ruin me for years. She'd say anything to hurt me. He turned away, ending the conversation. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain. He just told me not to listen. But how could I not? The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. A few days later, I met Richard's son. His name was Ethan, and he was 27, handsome and sharp-edged like his father. The moment he saw me, his face twisted with contempt. "You're a gold digger," he said loudly, not caring who heard. "You're using my father for his money. You're tearing this family apart." I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell him the truth, that I'd been desperate, that I'd had no choice. But Ethan didn't want to hear it. He kept attacking, his words cutting deep. He hated me with an intensity that felt almost personal. Richard told me to stay away from Ethan. "He's angry," he said. "He doesn't understand. Just ignore him, Scarlett." But I couldn't ignore Ethan. He was the only person in that house who showed real emotion, even if it was hatred. Over time, we kept running into each other. At first, we only fought. He blamed me for everything, and I tried to make him see reason. But slowly, something changed. We started talking about other things. Our lives. Our disappointments. The dreams we'd given up on. One afternoon, Ethan looked at me with something almost like concern. "My father is hiding something from you, Scarlett," he said quietly. "Something about your past. He doesn't want you to find out." My pulse quickened. What could Richard be hiding? What about my past? Ethan wouldn't say more, but I knew I had to find out the truth. Richard's office, the locked room, the forbidden space. One night, when Richard was away on business, I stood outside that door. My hand trembled as I turned the handle. It opened. Inside, the office was dark and imposing. Leather furniture, shelves lined with books, a massive desk in the center. I walked to the desk and started opening drawers. Most were filled with business documents, legal papers, nothing unusual. But in the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a stack of folders, I found a small wooden box. Inside was a photograph, old and faded. I held it up to the light. A beautiful woman was holding a baby in her arms. The baby's face was soft and tiny. I stared at it, and something inside me recognized that face. It was me, my breath caught. Standing next to the woman and the baby was a man. Younger, decades younger, but unmistakably Richard. My mother, Richard, together. I couldn't breathe. I slipped the photograph into my pocket. I didn't know what to think. My mind was spinning. I needed space. I needed air. I went out into the garden, and Ethan was there, pacing like a caged animal. He looked at me with wild eyes. "Scarlett, you have to listen to me," he said urgently. "My father isn't who you think he is. He's manipulative, dangerous. He only cares about control and wealth. He used you, just like he's used everyone in his life. You need to leave him. Take nothing and walk away." I listened, but exhaustion was pulling at me. Everything felt too heavy. Ethan kept talking, painting his father as a monster. He said Richard would destroy me, that I was in danger. But I began to see through it. Ethan wanted his father's fortune. He didn't want me to have any claim to it. He was trying to drive me away so he could inherit everything himself. I told him I needed time to think. He left, frustration written across his face. Richard had lied to me. That was true. But he'd also kept a promise to my mother. A promise he'd carried for 20 years. That night, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and Richard stood there. He looked older, tired, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "Scarlett," he said softly, "I never planned to fall in love with you." My heart stopped. Love. The word hung in the air between us. He said his feelings for me had become real. That somewhere along the way, the arrangement had turned into something he hadn't expected. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't beg or plead. He just told me the truth and waited. The 1-year anniversary of our marriage was only days away. I thought about Victoria's words, about the inheritance, about the contract. I had a choice to make. A week later, I went back to the mansion. Richard was waiting in the living room. I walked to the fireplace, holding the marriage contract in my hand. Without a word, I threw it into the flames. We both watched it burn, the edges curling and blackening until it was nothing but ash. Then I turned to Richard. "If I stay," I said, "it's not because of the money you promised me. It's because of something real." He walked toward me slowly, carefully. He took my hand, his touch warm and gentle. Then he pulled out his own copy of the contract and tore it into pieces. The paper fell like snow between us. That day, everything changed. Richard's love was real, deep, powerful. Ethan continued to spread lies about his father, but I stopped listening. I had found something I'd chosen for myself. That day, everything changed. Richard's love was real, deep, powerful. Ethan continued to spread lies about his father, but I stopped listening. I had found something I'd chosen for myself. Something that wasn't about survival or desperation. It was about love. Richard and I married again, this time not as part of an arrangement, but as two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. I got my first real movie role a few months later. I didn't need the money to feel secure anymore. I had a husband who loved me not for what I looked like, or what I could do for him, but for who I truly was. I learned something important through all of this. True happiness doesn't come from money or power or security. It comes from love, from connection, from making choices with your heart instead of your fear. Life's best decisions aren't the ones made out of desperation. They're the ones made out of hope. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because there are so many more stories to tell. Thank you for being here with me.